Basically, IBD, you have two forms, ulcerative colitis, which involves the colon, and the Crohn's disease, which involves almost like entire GI tract, also the other organs like skin. In ulcerative colitis, you have superficial inflammation of the colon, while Crohn's disease is associated with transmural inflammation. And ulcerative colitis is more common, 90 to 95%, while 5 to 10% are patients with Crohn's disease. It is said that patients with IBD have chronic inflammation of GI tract due to dysregulation of host immune responses secondary to normal pathogen or abnormal pathogen in GI tract or environmental factors. So it is an exaggerated immune response which is responsible for chronic inflammation of the GI tract. The risk factors, predisposing factors, genetic factors, endoscopy, histology, everything is different. I've been given a time of 15-20 minutes, so I may not be able to, go into the depth of it, but we'll give you the bird's eye view of what is this thing. As you say that patients with ulcerative colitis, blood and mucus diarrhea seen in 95% of people, abdominal pain, and they would have symptoms of extra intestinal involvement in the form of joint, ocular and skin. The commonest skins are erythema nodosum, pyoderma gangrenosum, probably aphthous lesions. And predisposition to cancer is seen in ulcerative colitis in 30 years. The diagnosis of ulcerative colitis is mainly done by clinical examination. When you have clinical history of any patient with blood and mucus diarrhea for more than 4 weeks, one must suspect ulcerative colitis or IBD, and the sigmoidoscopy and the biopsy is usually done. You have two systems to balance the inflammation, pro-inflammatory mediators and anti-inflammatory mediators. What happens in patients with IBD? The pro-inflammatory mediators are more and the anti-inflammatory mediators are reduced, as a result of which you have. Now, understanding the mechanism of action of drugs, one would like to understand what is the pathophysiology. There are two important phases, vascular phase and intestinal wall phase. What happens in IBD is there is increased number of plasma cells, increased lymphocytes, and their activated lymphocytes, they get activated, cause inflammation and develop IBD. So there are so many receptors of attachment, and therefore you can have drugs. You can see these MADCAM receptors, alpha-4, beta-7, selectin receptors, chemokine receptors, and various chemokines. So you have so many options. You have drugs which are acting against chemokines. You can have drugs which are acting against receptors, and so many things. So these will help you to understand the lymphocytes by free radicals, and this thing causes activation of NF-κB, and that leads to release of various cytokines and colonic inflammation. So basically NF-κB is common for heart. I was not aware that heart and intestines both one drug can be taken, and that is the NF-κB inhibitor. So my job is made simple by PP, who has already informed you what is the role of NF-κB in atherosclerosis, and here again the NF-κB is an inflammation in IL-12, and this NF-κB is activated by 1 kB. So if you have a drug which acts on 1 kB, probably translation of active NF-κB from cytoplasm to nucleus doesn't occur, as a result of which if you tap the NF-κB, probably you can conquer the IBD. This is the difference between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. These are two different diseases. So the current treatment options, you have antibiotics, probiotics, anti-inflammatory like aminosalicylates, you have corticosteroids, you have immune modulators like azathioprine, cyclosporine, lithotrexate, and biologicals. There are limitations of individual current agents. 5-ASA are associated with hematological abnormalities, hypersensitivity, GI disturbances, diarrhea, headache, and 5-ASA can cause pancreatitis as well as colitis, hypersensitive colitis. Corticosteroids, you are all aware of the side effects. Methotrexate can give rise to myelosuppression and so many things. Anti-TNF, latent infections, tuberculosis can be, exaggerated. So, what are the emerging options? Now, this slide will tell you the emerging options in patients with IBD. You have so many things. You have first is TNF alpha inhibitors, which are the approved drugs like infliximab, adalimumab, then golimumab. These are the approved drugs, TNF alpha inhibitors. Then you have various receptor inhibitors like JAK3, CAM inhibitors and chemokine receptors, and you have then interleukin inhibitors. Now amongst these, very few drugs have come to phase 3 and the registration level. But the promising ones which are being will be shortly launched in the market would be the, very difficult to remember the names, but vedolizumab, which is a CAM inhibitor, and the phase 3 trials have been going on. Golimumab is also one of the drugs which has been accepted, and then these JAK3 inhibitors, tasqutinib, this is also going for phase 3 trials. And these are same for patients with Crohn's disease also, more or less same drugs for Crohn's disease. There is a role of fecal microbial transplant. There is a lot of role of FMT in patients with Clostridium difficile colitis, antibiotic associated colitis, resistant antibiotic colitis. This has transformed the management of patients with. In patients with ulcerative colitis, this is the available literature which has shown so many trials. This is published in World Journal of Gastroenterology. Most of the trials have shown very promising results, and these are mainly used for patients who are not responding to conventional treatment. This is also stem cell therapy, mainly used for fistulizing Crohn's disease. Now you have one tablet which will take care of GI tract and heart, curcumin. Biologically active, phytochemical, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-proliferative, anti-angiogenic activity is there. The mechanism of action, it prevents activation of NF-κB, prevents translocation of NF-κB from cytoplasm to nucleus, and prevents release of inflammatory mediators. This is one of the trials which says that mild to moderate ulcerative colitis which did not respond after 2 weeks of mesalamine and local and the systemic mesalamine, I mean the oral and topical mesalamine, were randomized to curcumin plus 5-ASA and 5-ASA plus placebo. In a curcumin group as against the 5-ASA placebo group, the response rate, clinical endpoints and endoscopic revision was significantly higher, and it's a safe and promising agent for ulcerative colitis. So the conclusion was addition of curcumin to mesalamine was superior in inducing clinical and endoscopic remission. And this is also one of the trials where the curcumin plus mesalamine versus mesalamine and placebo, the relapse was less in curcumin plus 5 years ago. But then, this is on 89 patients. So basically, curcumin is a hydrophobic compound, poorly absorbed. So even if you take large amount, mainly in the GI tract, does not reach the systemic organ. The clinical trials carried out with the conventional curcumin have used high doses and the poor GI tolerability. So there was a need for effective and tolerable curcumin formulation having a good bioavailability, and this SMEDD technology by which the nanoparticle size particles have been developed, it improved absorption and better tissue penetration, probably has a role of for the curcumin to play in IBD. But more and more trials need to be performed in patients with IBD to say that this drug is effective. Thank you very much.